Working on an old Mary beam engine, I thought I would revisit this job of renovating this nice old engine. It needs to be a sympathetic restoration as it is quite old, and I also need to make some new parts for it. The footage that you're about to see is edited from a series that I made way back in 2014. And today I have to do this because I have an appointment at the doctor's to take out the metal staples that hold me together. And firstly, I must say how impressed I am with the workmanship on this engine. It is rare to see an engine made quite as well as this. I'm just having a quick look to see what needs doing to the engine, and as you can see there are some parts missing. It needs a lever that pivots on the cylinder as shown here with this piece of wood, and then two drop arms, one to go to the regulator side and one to go to the governor side. That's a simple fix. And then what I'll need to make is a pivot pin to go into the cylinder. As I said earlier, this is a very well made engine and it turns over very smoothly. It doesn't feel right though, something is amiss somewhere. There is compression where there does not need to be any compression. It looks to me like the timing's out. The eccentric rod is a bit loose, as though someone's been trying to adjust things in the past. The main regulator shaft is bent, as you can see here. This will need straightening. I'm now checking the state of the valve gear. Valve gear on a beam engine is more complicated than on other engines, and it's easy to get wear in the moving parts, and as you can see here, there is wear in the moving parts. In fact, looking closer, you can see that the plumber block is actually loose. That's not going to help. And the arm is loose on the shaft itself. Have a closer look. Applying some compressed air to the engine does not really make it run. It tries, but not quite. By messing around with the valve gear, I can get it to turn over, but that's no good having to have a hand on the valve gear. It's obvious to me that there's a problem with the valve events. This is a very well made engine indeed, and the paintwork generally is not bad, it's just damaged. I really don't want to destroy everything that was done by the original builder. Part of the charm of an engine like this is showing its age, so I will be refurbishing this engine very sympathetically. When an engine such as this has been stood for many years as an ornament, it will have accumulated grime, which is present in all the corners, everywhere on the engine, so use some white spirit to remove it. Using white spirit is recommended. Never ever use cellulose thinners, otherwise you will of course remove the paint. What the white spirit does is removes the dust, it removes the oil, and it also removes the residue from people polishing the engine in the past using metal polish. This metal polish residue is usually quite difficult to get rid of. You see it a lot on boilers where people have cleaned the boiler banding, but a couple of applications of white spirit will first of all loosen it and then remove it. I'm using a fine paintbrush, as you can see here, to get into all the corners. White spirit is quite a good degreaser. Not the best degreaser out there, I don't think, but it does degrease, so don't forget, once you've covered the engine in white spirit, you need to lubricate the lubrication points before running. You can see how the white spirit is cutting through all the oil residue on the crankshaft here. Here you see me applying some white spirit to the connecting rod. In various places on this engine, there are small specks of white paint. These have probably come from a ceiling that's been painted in the past, when someone forgot to cover up the engine. So this is emulsion paint, and you can see some here on the bed plate. This emulsion paint will not be removed by the white spirit, so you have to remove it manually. And the best thing I've found to do this with is a piece of mahogany, and just generally scrape it away. Be very careful not to remove the original paint. Even if you're going to be repainting the engine, it's most important to get rid of all the dirt. New paint over dirt is not the best idea. Sometimes the residue can be quite stubborn to get off. You have to give it more than one application of the white spirit. As you can see here on the beam, there was a particularly stubborn bit of metal polish residue there, but with a couple of applications it disappeared. I am actually going to repaint parts of this engine. I will colour match the paint, and I'll show how I do that later, and use it as a kind of touch-up paint rather than repainting the entire engine. Around the base of the engine is a particularly nice brass frame. This is mitered and soft soldered together, but it's been damaged in one of the corners. So here I'm using some wet or dry sandpaper to remove the oxidization, and then back to the brasso to get the finish. When I look at this repair, it's not terribly well done and it's not very strong, so I may take it on myself to repair this properly. The valve events are not right on this engine, not right at all. One of the problems is a lot of slop and play in the valve linkage, but it's not just that, the timing is radically out. So I'm going to have a quick look and see where the valve is actually set in the valve chest. And the first thing to do is to remove all these 8BA nuts. These are very small and easily lost, so it's quite important to find a suitable box to put them in. The valve chest cover comes away quite easily. There isn't a gasket in place. This engine is very well made and things do fit together quite well. The slide valve appears to be completely in the wrong place. It only uncovers one of the steam ports. Once I removed the valve link rod, I could see there was plenty of play on the shaft with this upright arm. So I thought it was a good idea to remove the bearing caps and take out the assembly to fix it. Each of these bearing caps are held in place by a pair of bolts, and once I removed the bolts I thought it would be a good idea to clean up the top face, as it was quite tarnished and dirty. An easy way I find to do this is to just use a piece of 800 grade wet or dry sandpaper on a metal block. Here you see me taking off the other bearing cap, using a spanner to initially slacken off the bolts, and then I use a small box spanner. I turn the end, as you can see on this box spanner in the lathe, to make it very thin at the end, and it allows it to get into very small places. Don't forget to put all these small parts in a safe place, especially the nuts and bolts. The top surface of the bearing cap gets exactly the same treatment as previously shown. While I had my special box spanner handy, I removed the exhaust manifold. This was overpainted and didn't look very good. What I'm going to do is remove the paint and polish up the part. Then I removed the valve rod lever. The whole thing is a little bit sloppy, so when I put it back on I'll probably put it on with some Loctite. But for the moment it's time to clean it up. When using the 800 wet or dry sandpaper method, if the parts are steel I recommend using some oil. This will stop the metal from dragging. Brass seems to be fairly self-lubricating, but steel isn't, and you get a better finish this way. This is very messy and time-consuming, but it's worth it. I don't just want to put the part on a polishing spindle because that will round the edges, and as you can see, it looks quite nice now. I removed the top caps of the bearings in the first place because I thought that the whole assembly would be able to be withdrawn from underneath the cylinder, but I was actually wrong. I would have had to remove the cylinder itself to do that. As it turned out, it didn't really need removing anyway, because the parts underneath the cylinder are very solidly and firmly attached to the shaft. It was only the arm at the end of the shaft that was actually loose. So I replaced the bearing caps, and I adjusted them, making sure that the top caps were not over-tightened to distort the bearing, so that the whole assembly moved very freely. Once the bearing caps were in place, I put a spot of oil on each bearing, and the whole thing is very free with no shake whatsoever. So this very important part of the renovation is now completed and all back together. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.